lean comfortably, how you would do it normally. Yeah, it's better. Legs up. Oh, yes. Okay.
Steady.
Steady. That's perfect. That is so cool. Okay. That is great.
The Last Days of Pompeii is certainly a photographic sequence. It's directing a whole host of actors. It's placed in another historical period. It deals with art, theatricality, and essentially it deals with what I think is our present-day situation.
Stand. Let's see you standing, okay? Lean on it. Oh, it's so perfect. Don't move yet, guys. We're getting another one.
I looked at La Jolla. The town was laid out in this incredible bay, and I looked at it and I thought, oh, it's like Pompeii. It's filled with these beautiful, affluent people living the good life on the brink of annihilation. And of course, California we are anyway. The relationships between America as this great colonial power and one of the early great colonial powers, Rome, was extremely clear to me.
Yes.
I always work with people, and of course I make use of people's creativity and their looks and in the way they handle themselves, the way they speak. But I'm really very definitive about what it is that I want. I'm kind of a dictator.
You want to put the helmet on one more time? I have to have consultation on this. I like them both ways. We may shoot it both ways. Yeah. How's that?
That's good.
But do it like this. Hold this hand like this. Okay, now don't forget your thumb. Down with your thumb, Bill.
He's got it down.
Don't look. Go. Go. That's good. Go. 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 Perfect.
Move about 1 decimeter.
I like that. I really like that.
On the other side.
Yeah. Much better.
It was staged at my friend's villa in Rancho Santa Fe, California. And if anyone, I guess, is dancing on the edge of the brink of destruction, I suppose it must be Rancho Santa Fe, lately called the richest community in the United States.
Thanks. Put it right down. No. I want it like
Come a little closer. Yeah. I mean, you can almost smell her. Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. Okay.
perfect. Perfect.
I've got this sort of, I guess, love affair with the past. When I was a kid, I wanted to have been an ancient Greek. We're talking like 5 years old, 6 years. I was fascinated with the Greek mythology, and I was passionately in love with the sculptures. You know, I'm from New York originally. The Metropolitan Museum, those pathetic broken people. It's sort of like a mausoleum of cripples. When I was in high school, I used to play hooky and go to the Metropolitan and feel up the, Perseus and all the poor fellows. And sometimes a guard would catch me and say, "Don't do that." I used to play with paper dolls all through my childhood. I continued these long, complicated stories. And I must say that even much later when I was in high school, I no longer played with these, but I still had them. And on the days that I was very depressed, I'd come home and I'd play with my paper dolls. It was almost like I'd been caught masturbating or something. It was like humiliating. But it was so important. It let out so much, So there's a richness in that it can do that kind of make-believe, which I guess is why I return to them. And even my big figures are, in a sense, cutouts, only they're bigger. One of my major passions has always been narrative. And I've always felt that narrative, as much as the human need, is breathing. We're constantly explaining ourselves and communicating in terms of putting material together that in some way has aspects of story. I would define what I do essentially as invent histories. I used to have this fantasy when I was a kid that I would be this invisible person who would be there when Keats was dying, when Marlowe got killed, when Caravaggio was screwing with whoever he was screwing, with all of these things would be happening, and I would be there invisible, and I would know everything. It's a very Faustian image, and especially for kids. I mean, I don't know where I got it, but it was this passion, and it was always the past. I used to think that I didn't have a self that was mine, and I literally decided on being an actor when I decided that if I don't have a self of my own, I can borrow other people's. It's something which continued when I started working with persona, because it was a very good way of dealing with a lot of the political and social issues that were of interest to me. As a young feminist, I was interested in what would be my male self, so I figured, oh, I'll put hair on my face. The other possibility was a little bit difficult, so I put a beard on and then discovered I was a king. Whatever, he became my political self. And then my most glamorous, wonderful woman self in those days, a ballerina, Antonova. And I had taken some ballet lessons a number of years before, but I really essentially taught myself from a book, standing still with a chair in my studio in front of a mirror. I always tend to see the funny sides of things. That's the richest experience, is when it's the laughter and it's the tears together. And I know that sounds very Jewish, and perhaps that's part of my Jewish, it probably is the kind of humor I was brought up with. It's like endless humor in my family life, and at the same time, oy. 100 boots. Somehow it came to me in a dream. They are black boots, big black boots. Got them at the Army Navy surplus, and I printed them up on postcards, and over the course, it turned out, finally, of 2.5 years, 51 cards were mailed out to about 1,000 people around the world. Now, it is a piece that I saw as a kind of pictorial novel that was sent through the mails, came unannounced, unasked for, and then it came in the middle of people's lives. So this was the first one that sort of set the stage, 100 boots facing the sea. The next one, I think, was sent about 3 weeks later, was 100 boots go to church. An artist friend, Alan Sekula, told me recently that one of the reasons he loves this piece so much is that it's old California that doesn't exist anymore. The church is gone, some condos there. Solana Beach has become condo heaven. And then 100 boots turn the corner. There's some sort of angst going on. They were doing suburban happy things then. Now something's happening. 100 boots trespass, first crime. There they are. I climbed into the electric company pumps and stuck my boots there, and the sign, as you see, says, trespassing, littering, tampering, forbidden by law. 3 days later, I sent the one, 100 boots on the lam. And this is around the middle of the piece, 100 boots on the job, and that's at Signal Hill with a little oil derricks near in LA, near Long Beach. And then a few weeks later, 100 boots out of a job. And the place where I shot this with all these awful smokestacks and everything is a place in Long Beach called Terminal Island. And then eventually, the Museum of Modern Art asked me to do a show there, and I said, well, I have to finish the series, and they said, fine, and I shot the boots in New York as well. This is one of the New York pictures. They could see the World Trade Center over there. And then, after it was over, the last day of their show back in California, I mailed this one, 100 Boots Go on Vacation, and there you see their souls. Oh, it's a bad joke. Some of my work is just downright outrageous and funny, obviously, but it plays even that stuff that looks like the most obviously ridiculous. There is, I think, a relation to human experience that gives it more of a rich layer. I adore ballet in some ways, but it is a totally ridiculous art form. I mean, it is so stupid. I love it because it's pathetic in its way. It's ridiculous for people to walk around on stilts. It's foolish, and there's something beautiful and sad about it, and very mortal in a way. Which one of the male dancers was explaining ballet on television, and there's a ballerina there, and he takes her by her crotch like this and holds her hand like this, and he says, some people, I don't know what some people would call this, but I call it art. And this sort of sex and ballet are actually, very close, also in the way that romanticism and sex are. So I'm obviously poking fun at that aspect of it.
To learn more about Art21, Art in the 21st Century, and to download the free Educator's Guide, please visit PBS Online at pbs.org. Art21, Art in the 21st Century is available on videocassette or DVD. The companion book to the series is also available. To order, call PBS Home Video at 1-800-PLAY-PBS.